Time to make changes to the state's new marijuana law goes into effect at midnight. Governor Mike DeWine is pushing the legislature to act as soon as possible, and things are changing by the minute. Action News reporter Josh Krupp following new developments at the hour on the efforts to make changes to this law. Josh?
Yeah, and Lee, really by the second, the Senate voting right now on a new proposal. Let's walk you through what you may have missed here over the course of the last few days. Earlier this week, Senate Republicans introduced some pretty significant changes to the state's marijuana law. Voters approved it at the ballot box just about a month ago. Many Republicans did not want those changes to go into effect at all. But in the last couple of hours, Republicans have announced they've made some concessions to all of the changes that they wanted. The Senate voting as we speak to approve those in a bipartisan fashion. Here's what's going to change. Ohioans will still be allowed to possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana. The bill would also allow people to grow up to 6 plants per household. One thing that issue 2 did not include the expungement of prior marijuana offenses for people who had less than 2.5 ounces. That is included in this bill. And this is big. Anybody over 21 can buy marijuana at medical dispensaries when this bill goes into effect. That'd be a much quicker timeline than what we saw with issue 2 providing. Governor DeWine says that right there really is an effort to try and get ahead of black market sales.
We have an obligation to implement a safe, legal market in Ohio for those people who want to use recreational marijuana. But we also have an obligation to protect the rights of those who don't want to be exposed to it.
Again, waiting to see what that final vote count is for the Senate voting. Just wrapping up right now. DeWine wants these changes to pass as soon as possible, but they likely won't tonight. The House has already adjourned. It's not in a rush either. Republicans in the House don't like some of the changes the Senate is moving forward with, but the only things that will change at midnight tonight, legal possession of 2.5 ounces and the ability to grow up to 6 plants per person or 12 per household at home. Lee.